in this first webinar about a new sector into our office to show the opportunities. This webinar will be recorded and will be also spoken in English because the document, the documentation, the research was written in English, and we invite after that to be with you. Listen, the first thing I would like to introduce the four people who will be talking and presenting the survey and research about the waste management in Canada. First of all, will be presented by the Trade Commissioner for the offices in Canada, Mr. Marco Saladini. Second, will be talking the owner in terms of intellectual property, not, but in intellectual work is Mr. Eric Meliton. He's the CEO of the Ekion Group, who did the research and the survey. And third, and fourth will be two people that were leading cases into the sector of waste management and waste treatment in Canada. They have been with us in Ecomondo looking for business opportunities for their projects in Canada. Mr. Bob Paul, he's the consultant of a company, five solutions in Vancouver. He's talking about circular economy. And the fourth one will be Rachel Morier. That will be, he's one of the managers of Beer Store. Beer Store is one of the biggest stores in Canada in terms of dealing with beer. And they have many stores in British Columbia and Ontario. And they have the program of dealing and managing logistics and gathering all the beer cans. So they went to Ecomondo for this purpose, looking for the Italian solutions in this concept. So no, I don't want to keep you talking with me. So I leave the word to Mr. Marco Saladini, who will be presenting the survey and the research. Thank you, Marco.
Hi, everyone. I was tormented by this question of whether I should speak in Italian or English, but in the end I decided for English so we can keep all the panelists together, in the discourse, and also have a meaningful interaction later, because your questions will come spontaneously in English, because we have spoken in English for the whole time. So, but also the research that we presented today is in English, and let me load the presentation that we have prepared, and will be only part of what has been prepared, because of course the time constraints. But I hope it will illustrate enough the potential of the Canadian market for waste management. So please tell me if you don't hear or don't see, otherwise I'll just go ahead with the presentation. Okay, here we have the project purpose, which is the analysis of the Canadian waste management industry to identify opportunities specifically for Italian companies to enter the Canadian marketplace. So we're not dealing with the whole range, the whole spectrum of clean technologies, but mostly waste management. And you can see in the chart, I mean, there are so many possible interactions within the industry and also outside of the industry, because we know that this is very sensitive, politically sensitive, socially sensitive market with many stakeholders who have to be dealt with. And on the left in the slide, you can see the project team. We had Gustavo Di Chiara, who had just introduced this webinar, and who is the trade analyst in our office in Toronto, who's in charge of this sector. And then we have Ekion Group led by Eric Meliton, who will speak later. The key outcomes, okay, we did asked Econ to prepare an analysis of the Canadian waste management industry in 6 main segments. So air pollution, water pollution, solid waste management, remediation, waste to energy production, and the circular economy. And these are also the categories in which the 64 interviewees were categorized. And I believe Eric will go more into details about this part of the research, while I will give you more the quantitative framework, the quantitative picture of the market. Then an overview of governmental impactful regulations and policies was prepared with a lot of references. Not sexy stuff, I acknowledge, but it's something that needs to be taken into consideration when approaching the market. Because, as we said, it's heavily regulated and socially and politically sensitive, besides economically, of course. And then the document contains also a market entry toolkit, which helps companies that want to look at the market structure their business plan. So, of course, can be a business plan for each of the companies, but it helps the companies devise one. And okay, so the overview is all in this slide, but then we will go, of course, into more detail. The overall approximate size of the market is 48 billion Canadian dollars. 1 Canadian dollar is about 0.7 euros. So basically, we're looking at a market of 40 billion euros. And it looks very attractive, I would say, in terms of size, although not as big as other ones like the US or other ones, but it's still this is very sizable market. Here we have some numbers about all the facilities. Suffice to say that there are 294 composting facilities and 402 materials recovery and recycling facilities. And the cost of tipping is about 113 Canadian dollars per ton. So that gives you an idea of the margins and of the cost of the margins of the operators. And there are almost 1,900 wastewater treatment plants in Canada. While for as far as contaminated sites are concerned, almost 5,000 were surveyed in 2018 as being active and commanding an expenditure of over 400 million Canadian dollars. So this is a little bit of market sizing. And well, the field survey was done by Econ, interviewing, as we said, 64 organizations. Here you can see some big logos, but some big name logos, but 30 were companies, and the remainder were scattered across different entities, including not-for-profits, academia, and government. The respondents had 13 questions to respond to. I mean, and we did compound their replies in the document. We will not find the specific interviews for obvious privacy reasons, but you will find a good summary of what were the most business relevant, let's say, hints that they provided. And the full report, anyway, is available on our website on the ICE or ITA, or whatever you want to call us. I mean, we're still the Italian governmental agency promoting trade and investment with Italy. And it's on our main website. You can find it in several ways, but you can look at our page, the Canada page, and from there go to retrieve it. You have to register. It is a free registration required to download it. So let's go now into the various segments. Circular economy. Canada has a 6.1% circularity rate, which means that 6.1% of the collected material is actually used and transformed into something else and enters some other production process. And this is lower than the EU, actually. So there's a big gap there of 5%. And it might lead to a significant increase in waste, resource use, and emissions if it doesn't increase. So there are all the reasons for the three levels of government to enter into this kind of action. This market is estimated at 13 billion Canadian dollars, and the three levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipals, are aligned on this, are receptive, and want to make a difference. And the single-use plastic industry is now being used as a model to create circularity in other economic sectors, while there is a need and a search for innovative solutions from both domestic and international providers. And this was one of the reasons why our delegates went to Ecomondo to look for that kind of solutions, as probably Rachel will comment on later. And waste to energy is 20 billion Canadian dollars market size. That's 2020 estimate. There is a growing momentum for solutions that focus on on-site biodigestions and of different scales. And this of the biodigesters is a very prominent example of European-centered technology that has been adopted in Canada. And there are governmental policies, but also governmental incentives. And there is a general willingness to implement those solutions. So it could be a very interesting market. And by the way, I mean, we have created a sort of desk that takes care of procurement or public procurement opportunities. This desk is located in our office in Montreal and is led by Paolo Benzi, I think, who's also on this call. And here's an example of what Paolo dug out of his archives, of his databases, of a project that had been tendered out earlier on in 2022. So, you know, we also can help you with preparing your bid for similar projects. Waste to energy. Here you can see that it is a significant market. We don't have a market size for it, but we know that there are 7 municipal incineration plants that are located in Canada and that are burning in excess of 700 tons of municipal solid waste every year. And so this is a small part of the 34 million tons of municipal solid waste that are collected. And so there is a lot of room for growth here. Now, for water, we have a size of over 6 billion Canadian dollars. So for water management, and we see that all the facilities are kind of old, and they need renewal, they need investment. So not only infrastructure requires billions, most likely in retrofitting and replacement, there is also a need to modernize the workforce that has the technical background to handle those facilities. And the contaminants that are prevalent are the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and then the endocrine disruptors from medications, but also hazardous and minute contaminants. So this is an important segment as well. And here we have another example of a project that was tendered, and this was in April 2022, upgrades to a wastewater treatment plant in Welland, close to the Niagara Falls. About solid waste, this is a 4.4 billion Canadian dollars market size, and here, as we have already mentioned, I mean, only 1/3 of the. No, actually, this is a different number. The figure highlights how only 1/3 of the separated material, so after sorting, generated by industries and trade and other economic entities ends up in a land fill. So it's not enough. I mean, this should be the sorted material should be used much more, because it's a source of revenue and possibly of energy. So here the challenges are that the tipping fees are rising, and this also adds to the different processes that each city has created, and that is a challenge again for the operators, because they have to adhere to different rules based on where they are located. So there has been a market consolidation amongst service and technology providers, and so the suggestion here is to come with a specialized service and technology portfolio and try to address customization needs and try to fit in one of the bigger teams that are already providing their services to the market. As far as remediation is concerned, this is a $2.2 billion Canadian dollars market size, and we see that there is a large demand for remediation services due to different drivers. I mean, ongoing sanctions that are placed by regulators for land use restriction, growing costs for remediations, reputational and financial risk, and an overall impact on natural resources by these sites that need to be remediated. So there is pressure to address this issue, and there is a wide range of sectors that can be focused, can be involved in this effort. So lastly, but not less importantly, the air pollution. This is estimated to be a 1.7 billion Canadian dollars sized market in continued. I mean, even if the decline of emissions has continued for the last 20 years, we still have large emissions from the oil and gas and transportation sectors, and we have regulations to address this situation. So 2016, the multi-sector air pollutants regulation came out and aimed at curbing industrial emissions. And for the next 5 years, I mean, for the years from 2020 to 2025, we see a focus on regulatory standards for a bunch of other pollutants like fine particulate matter, ozone, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide. So these are all areas in which the solution providers can try to come in and bring their ideas and their technologies and ultimately their efforts. So this is my presentation about the research, which I encourage you to download as soon as possible and read. Also because we have a big appointment about which I will tell you a little bit at the end. In the meantime, I want to remind you who we are. I mean, I'm a trade commissioner for Canada. We do have the mission to promote trade and attract foreign investment to Italy, but we also, and of course in collaboration with a lot of other entities, but our mission is very specific and very clear. We support your marketing, we support your search for investors or partners, business partners overseas. So this is done through offices in every country, or every country that is relevant for our economic international economic projection, and of course we work with counterparts and stakeholders. We have hundreds of programs, and in Canada we have between 30 to 50 programs every year in a wide range of sectors. In environment, we do want to assist you entering the market, and so we can do that with customized assistance services. We can help you search for commercial partners, distributors, technicians, customers, investors, and also help you with your autonomous promotional event, with your participation in trade shows, with the need to bring in delegates to trade shows or to visit your company and other events that you may imagine. We will come back to Americana, which was the event that we're promoting now, and at the end of this chat, which is about finished, at least for my part. And of course, we do also prepare market studies and notes. So lean on us when you're looking at the Canadian market. We do operate, as I mentioned before, a procurement desk, and this sector in particular, the waste management sector has an important number of tenders that are issued by the public sector. So definitely talk to Paolo Benzi in Montreal and look at our website, which is www.gareappalti.it, to see what we can do for you. And we come to the last slide, which describes our participation in Americana 2023. This is a trade show and a conference held in Montreal, Quebec, so on the eastern part of Canada, from March 20th to March 22nd of 2023. And we will distribute this presentation to those who signed up, and you can find the details here and at this link and this page about the trade show. Our involvement is that we are creating a delegation of Italian companies that might want to participate in the show, and we will provide one exhibition space of their own, and we will include them in the official event catalog. We make a promotional brochure. We do some communication actions to increase their visibility, and this will have a very modest fee. So we will support with public money the participation in Americana, companies willing and able to come. Of course, there will be access also to other parts of the event, and especially the knowledge dissemination and discussion and debates with important stakeholders in the clean tech arena. And you can definitely sign up for this. The space is limited, so hurry up. February 3rd is the deadline, and we will assign the space to eligible companies in the order by which applied while it is available. So thank you very much, and I pass the floor again to Gustavo to introduce the next speaker, thanking all of you for being here, and especially the panelists for their continued help and support to this initiative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Nice presentation. A lot of encouragement and opportunities for the Italian companies. First, to pass the word to Eric Meliton, I would like to remind that this sector is part of the clean tech sector. It's one of the most dynamic sectors right now. And in Canada, it grew too fast and too challenging. So we understood this from the moment there were some expos in Italy inviting companies, and we saw that in our office grew up the number of companies looking for new technologies. This is why we are trying to prepare like a best landing for the following wave. So we prepared asking the assistance and collaboration of the company, the Eric Meliton Group, just to prepare like a map, like a list of incentive policies, and also the possibilities to help the Canadian market into the growing with some technology that they were looking for them everywhere, and in Ecomondo and remediation, RenTech. Both sectors, both expos were growing by duplicating the number every year. So we understood that the need of the companies of Canadian big companies are looking for new technologies rather than preparing the time to develop their own technologies into the market, into the local market. So that's why Eric Meliton did this amazing job showing with the purpose to show to the Italian companies how to deal in every sector, political, technology standard, whatever, will be the first wave, and obviously use with our offices in Toronto and Montreal to help the first learning of the Italian. So I don't want to stay here much more, and I pass the word to Eric Meleton, and thank you, Eric, for coming.
Thank you, Gustavo, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you, Marco, for presenting the opening part of this webinar. It's been a treat to work with the Italian Trade Agency for the last few months. The biggest part of what we were looking at for the Canadian waste management industry is to facilitate the access to for Italian companies to enter into Canada. As much as the target generally is the United States for North America, Canada is actually a very welcoming industry market for this sector because there are a lot of complex challenges, which you'll hear from Bob Paul and from Rachel as well from the beer store, is that companies here, national, multinational companies, are really trying to address problems that are longstanding, things that they haven't been able to address for many years, that innovation and international innovation and in the clean tech side, better services, better technology advancements, they're open to that as much as it's still risk averse. The Canadian marketplace is still very conservative. There are progressive national and multinational companies that want to solve these problems for whatever reasons they have. So the portion that I wanted to talk about to expand upon Marco's presentation was to answer a couple of questions that either will come through the webinar from the folks on the call, or just questions that we thought you'd like to know more about in terms of market drivers and restraints, the complexity of regulations, government incentivization, and why is there a benefit for strategic partnerships? Those are the 4 questions I'm going to try to answer. From the key market drivers and restraints, this is actually embedded in the report that you have access to. I'm not going to read our points that we identified, but just highlight some of the key ones that we discovered through the 64 interviews with the IC&I sector. The biggest market drivers, the top 3 that we discovered, were that process improvements and energy efficiencies are still leading to operational savings. So this is why companies are seeking out better improvements in the Canadian waste management industry. Their overall emissions and operational footprint reductions are top of mind. You have companies that are doing TCFDs, you have companies that are doing environmental social governance now. These are the reasons now as to why the industry is starting to make these changes and addressing problems that have existed for many years. Industry reputational risk caused by regulatory non-compliance. This is an ongoing problem. A lot of the bigger companies, they've tried to address everything that they can, but reputational risk caused by their downstream impact of their waste streams, of their pollution footprint, these are going to be reputationally impactful to them, not only in their sector, but in terms of their reputation as a company in Canada. And then the 4th one that I wanted to highlight here is regulatory compliance for emerging and challenging contaminants of concern. So those are kind of interrelated in the sense that an ongoing regulatory non-compliance, if there's more emerging contaminants and more challenging ones that need to be addressed, if the federal government or the provincial government are trying to target different things that they want to address in industry, a lot of the companies know about these problems already and are hoping to be proactive to address them. The industry itself does have market restraints. As I mentioned, the conservatism of the Canadian market as a whole is obviously a need for that strategic partnership side. But other market restraints that exist in the Canadian waste management industry as well are the typical ones. You have capital and operational costs for effective treatment solutions and technologies. That's both domestic and international in terms of innovation. So that's always going to be a big factor in how RFPs are done and tenders are done and decisions are made. The aging infrastructure of the industry itself, so the Canadian waste management industry is very old. And so there's a lot of dated technologies that need to be upgraded. But then the aging infrastructure also relates to the retiring workforce. There's a big market boom now of people that have chosen to retire during the pandemic. There's a lot of gaps now in technical expertise in companies. And so the retiring workforce also leads to an opportunity for companies that kind of serve as an O&M, an operations and maintenance provider, companies that provide full services and scope of that way to address some of those gaps from a technical expertise side. And then a lack of awareness from gatekeeper relationships. So engineering, procurement, and construction firms in Canada specifically, and also in the United States, they serve as a gatekeeper. So if these companies don't have any awareness of international innovation or international service capacity that's available from Italian companies, that lack of awareness serves as a big barrier for companies to enter the Canadian marketplace, because they're the ones that have to source the technology overall. And the bonus one that I wanted to highlight here is the slow adoption of certain, I guess, rarely established Canadian companies in adopting innovative solutions because of that overall risk aversion. I wanted to highlight that because the companies we spoke to, we were trying to identify referrals and relationships that the Italian Trade Agency could facilitate for the Italian companies wanting to come here. So we purposely identified those 30 companies to target companies that would be willing to have these initial facilitated conversations to really identify what they needed to do next. So the next question, what's the purpose of the research? What was the benefit of looking through the complexity of the Canadian marketplace? We looked at a number of regulations. We looked at a number of the challenges that happen at a provincial level across the country. So that's all in the report. For the absence of time, what I wanted to highlight is I wanted to mention that we put together a market entry toolkit with the typical things that you would normally want to prepare as a company wanting to enter a new market, whether that be domestic or international. So this is identifying some of the key stakeholders you would want to enter from a federal side, some of the strategic alignments that are available from the provincial side, and some of the highlights in terms of taxation, legal, regulatory that you have to be aware of. Within that toolkit, we also added in upcoming incentivization or existing ones that exist that you can access as a company internationally, or that you could help a Canadian domestic company facilitate their use of those funds to utilize innovation to use a service or technology that an Italian provider can bring to Canada. One of the ones I wanted to highlight, just looking at my notes here, there's a new fund that's being offered by Innovation Science Economic Development, ICED as an acronym. It's called the Net Zero Accelerator. It facilitates foreign entry by international solution providers, and it's about an $8 billion fund. So it hasn't fully launched yet, so there's nothing on websites right now. It's in development to launch in 2023. We caught early wind of that developmental launch. Ultimately, it's going to be about $10 million per capital project that would be facilitated for Canadian companies to use international treatment providers and solution providers. So that's a very strategic access point that the ITA can facilitate for you. We have a direct linkage from Echion Group to the funding agents that are responsible for the Net Zero Accelerator. And then when that program launches, I think that would be something that ITA would be helpful to announce to the Italian companies to use this as an entry point to utilize resources that are available to companies like yours. What I wanted to highlight next was looking at strategic partnerships. So as one of the things that I mentioned in a restraint, the lack of awareness from gatekeeper engineering, procurement, and construction firms, strategic partnerships, for what it's worth, is actually the best way to kind of circumvent that or overcome that, because a lot of the engineering firms are multinationals in basis. So they have offices in Italy, they have offices all over Europe and the rest of the world. And case studies of projects or collaborations that have already been established are helpful to bring that development here. That being said, the biggest challenge with case studies is that if a company can't see the case study firsthand, it wasn't done in Canada, they don't want to be the first of its kind to volunteer, to be the one to go through all the pain points, it's tougher for them to get a perspective of the benefits of utilizing your service or your technology. So strategic partnerships and really effective case studies are going to be the best ways to build credibility, build awareness, going to these trade shows that the ITA is offering to you, having these facilitated referrals be done by the ITA. These are the things that Ekion does recommend through the report, is to have an ongoing relationship through strategic partners that are already established here. And that can actually be engineering firms that you've worked with in Italy that have North American offices to really facilitate that gatekeeper entry point. Where we wanted to highlight that further, though, is that there are a number of nonprofit groups and trade associations whose focus is to benefit the 6 industrial sectors that the ITA asked Ekion to research. Those nonprofit groups and trade associations also serve as a credibility stakeholder partner that's potentially available for you to work with and within. They're all technical people who used to be in industry and have worked with companies of various sizes in the sector. And so they serve as a best entry point to help with facilitated access to the country's companies and different end users that you could be, I guess, selling into or bidding on projects that they have available. On the public side, it's no different. So the tenders and RFPs that Marco had presented in his portion of the presentation are highlights of the same challenges. RFPs and tenders, requests for proposals and tenders, typically have different kind of requirements of established capacity, established relationships, established examples, which leads to the last point that I wanted to highlight in my portion of the webinar. Was in the toolkit and in the actual report that you have access to, we tried to highlight 3 different companies that were internationally based, waste management treatment technology providers or service providers that have managed to make a successful entry into Canada over the years, some very recent. So the ones we wanted to highlight, we have an Italian company, Gruppo AP, based out of Italy. They actually established AB Energy, which is a sustainable energy company focused on agriculture, waste management, municipality sector, a lot of work in the western part of Canada. They are an Italian success story of entering this market through partnerships, through established subsidiaries. The other 2 companies, there's a company called BioN. In the presentation, you saw a picture. They're providing waste to energy resource capacity. So they take municipal waste from the region of Peel, from all of the municipalities in certain parts of southwestern Ontario, in a small township called Elmira. That township uses all of that organic waste that is collected as a waste to energy source. BioN utilizes German technology and Austrian technology to utilize at their treatment plant, at their organics treatment plant, recovery plant. And so those types of systems were facilitated in direct private-public partnership with the township of Elmira, as an example. And then the one that was actually featured heavily in the report was actually a wastewater treatment company that had multiple awards given to them for innovation. A company called BioGill, which is actually an Australian wastewater treatment company that got embedded in the Niagara winery district. So for Italian companies that service the wineries in Italy, this translated really well for the wastewater sector treatment requirements for the winery industry in Niagara Falls, which is a very competitive international market in Canada. And this could have similarities in British Columbia and other parts from just the winery side. And so the BioGill entry was actually facilitated by the provincial government, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and with a nonprofit group that had innovation funding that was provided by the provincial government to select a suitable technology that solved the wastewater problem. We used it as a case study. It's about 5 or 6 years old, to highlight the full breadth of how to utilize these partnerships and these strategic alignments to really get this access point and entry point fully established. They now have a successful set of case studies in Ontario, which they've translated to other international markets in the winery district, in the winery sector. And yet they didn't have to establish a subsidiary in Canada as a result of that. And so that's another example we wanted to show, that it doesn't take that big upfront investment of bringing a bunch of people and resources and capital to Canada. You can still come here as a technology provider or a service provider. So that's where I'm going to conclude here. I hopefully have provided you with more of a highlight of the report and give you a little bit of a flavor of what you can read. As Gustavo and Marco had mentioned, this is meant to be a way to answer some of these questions. So I will pause there and hope that there's additional questions beyond the ones that I highlighted, and pass it back over to Gustavo.
Thank you, Eric. You are always amazing, showing the possibilities for the companies coming to Canada. And you express the idea of coming in two versions, the version of investing and the version of as a collaboration with Italian companies, with the Canadian companies. This is the first idea. I only remind my 10 years ago when I first arrived in Canada, when I saw all the domestic garbage going in trucks to Detroit. Now, two things have changed. The first one is the law. The law now is forbidden to transport garbage, so they need how to deal with it. And then the other side is the incentive to deal with this inside. This is the new market, and that's why we are trying to promote all the old technology from Italy. Italy is a country of centuries of history in dealing with garbage. So this is why we are trying to prepare the documentation and landing in the first way we can do for the moment. Thank you. Waiting for the last part for the Q&A, I will pass the word to Mr. Bob Paul. He's a consultant in British Columbia, and he works together with Rachel Morier. But he's a consultant in British Columbia in terms of circular economy, one of the most amazing items to prepare the information for the Italian companies. Thank you, Paul. I pass the word to you.
Hey, Gustavo, thank you. And thank you to Marco and Eric for that presentation. I'm going to now build on that and also talk generally about the circular economy of things and kind of why we need to kind of do the things we need to do in the circular economy. And also bridge it to opportunities in British Columbia. And I'll touch on a little bit of extended producer responsibility and what that is and what BC is doing. So we'll get started here. Can everyone see this presentation? Is it in share mode?
Not yet.
Okay.
You are far away, Bob. You are too far away in British Columbia.
Oh, yeah. Just hang on here. Just okay. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, it's coming. Okay.
Yes. You can make it full screen if you want, and it will be even bigger. Yeah.
Just did that. Just hang on a sec.
It's the little screen and close to the sliding bar for size in the lower right corner. Now we can still see it like that. I mean, not
okay. Yeah. I've got two screens here. Just hang on a sec here.
that's why.
thing.
Here you go.
Is that better? We see
Much
that?
better. Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is about circular economy, business opportunities in Canada for Italian companies, and I'm going to look at the advancing the circular economy for materials, water, and energy. And I'm going to take you through a bit of kind of building the story to kind of why we need sort of technology solutions for materials, water, and energy. So if we look at the world of trade, we've been trading since the Industrial Revolution or even prior to that, but countries are making products and they're trading them and using them domestically. And part of the story is this, the movement of materials, production process, and all of that contributes to our world emissions. And this is just to give you an idea of the snapshot of our global emissions and what they look like from transportation and production and shipping. So basically, the planet is warming, and carbon emissions is the culprit, and leading to accelerating climate change. So this graphic is the waste generation in Canada. It will show you by province and some territories that where waste is generated at residential. On the right-hand side, there's the legend, and also the commercial sector. So you can see which provinces are, how they're doing on kilograms per person per capita on generation and where the opportunities lie. And this is from Stats Canada, and they have a lot of great information on waste and recycling. So our 9 planetary boundaries are being compromised, and essentially this is graphic. It shows you where. The next slide will show you kind of focusing, but the opportunities area here are to fix these compromised areas of the planet with technologies and dealing with carbon and waste. So waste we normally think of as waste as solid waste, but there's waste into the atmosphere of emissions that we need to tackle with technologies, and also opportunity to deal with recovery of waste in wastewater. That's been touched on, Eric touched on that a little bit, but a huge opportunity in that space, not just in municipal, obviously in agricultural as well. So here's where the compromises to the planetary boundaries are happening. The loss of the biosphere's integrity, this is biodiversity, and loss and extinction, and climate change. Obviously, we hear a lot about it, and this is where our focus is now around waste, is looking at the connections to climate change. Land system changes are going on as a result of climate change. And one of the big culprits is nitrogen phosphorus overflows into the oceans and waterways from agricultural activity is a huge opportunity area. And that's where we need to stop and turn things around. So this is the World Intellectual Property Innovation Index, and they measure countries' basket of goods on these sort of areas, and they put out a report, and I'm going to show you sort of accumulation of this scorecard that they put out, and where Canada sits, and also touch on where Italy sits, and in the next slide. So you can have a closer look at this later on at your own time. But it's really interesting how they look at the inputs and the outputs of the index of how they measure innovation in countries. And here's a slide showing where we sit today. This is a report that has come out in 2022. So Canada now sits 15th in the world for innovation. So this is in all areas, not just environmental. It looks at investments made in the countries to drive innovation on all fronts. And Italy is at 28th. And I think the opportunity there is collaboration can build the innovation score to a higher score by making collaborations and partnerships between countries on sharing the technologies and either supplementing or complementing technologies to advance dealing with our challenges that we face from climate change and waste. And this is Government of Canada's focus areas on the sort of the circular economy of things and technology. So to the left, this is listing the sort of the focus areas and opportunity areas. So alternative fuels, battery recycling, certification, clean transportation, climate engineering, electric industrial vehicles, energy efficiency, environmental remediation. We've heard a lot about that previously in Eric's discussion. Renewable energy, of course, and waste management. This has been a key part of our discussion right now, and water treatment. So in order for us to look at making all this happen, there's these sort of four key areas that we must look at. On the policy, we need good policy. On the environment and climate change, we seem to have that signal in Canada. And partnerships are key. Eric has touched up on that, and that's a good way to enter into Canada is to find those business partnerships. So that's the B2B, but also government to government. And what I mean by that is the Italian Trade Agency partnering up with the Canadian government on things, on bigger concepts and support, do things together. So there's an opportunity to explore those areas. So the innovation ecosystem, it's there for all sectors. Canada is supporting this from startups to commercialization. So that's a really good thing. And then investments, we have venture capital funding and we have government funding. And again, Eric touched on that. There's all kinds of funds being announced, and he mentioned one of them recently. Another one I'll mention is Sustainable Development Technology Canada. It's one of the bigger ones, and there's opportunities to do partnerships there with foreign companies coming in, and Italian companies can look at those kind of partnerships with Canadian companies that might be already in that ecosystem. Focusing in on British Columbia, and I'm based in Victoria, right in the, if you look at the map on the tip of Vancouver Island, that's the capital city. Vancouver is by far the larger center. 3.5 million or so people live in that region. But this is 8 economic regions in British Columbia. They're spread out. It is a huge province. We have about 6 mountain ranges from the coast to the Rockies, and so lots of mountains and valleys. So the geography is very hilly and mountainous. So transportation emissions are larger for British Columbia, but this graphic is essentially to give you an idea of the size of our province and the economic zones and the populations within those zones. So extended producer responsibility. This is a policy that British Columbia government brought in, and my background is a lot in this space. Extended producer responsibility. I worked for the provincial government for 30 years. 25 or so years were on waste and the EPR policy and advancing it. So today we've got about 21 EPR programs, and that's basically where we've been calling waste is now a resource that's collected by producers of products. So the regulation is the recycling regulation, and it puts producers selling into British Columbia in charge and responsible for end-of-life management of the materials, so we don't landfill them. So we have 5 categories of materials in the regulation, and those various sectors. Big producers, small producers are involved in paying into programs to get the materials collected from consumers. So about 21 programs, and collectively, the externality cost through eco fees or internalization of product costs, these programs collectively represent about $500 million. So there's a lot of money shifted into these programs run under generally not-for-profit models by producers, and they report to government. So what we see when this happens is investments in reuse and recycling happening, as well as thermal destruction of materials that cannot be reused and recycled. And the goal is to obviously prevent the end-of-life management of products and packaging from reaching landfills. So saving local government taxpayers millions of dollars. In case I mentioned 500 million here is what the cost of those materials now being managed through programs. So we're doing a huge, making a huge dent in the waste that could have gone there if we didn't have this policy. And so therefore we're adding lots of opportunities in the circular economy for materials to flow into and get reused in making new product again. This is looked at as being profitable for business in the sense that when we collect materials and we can monetize those materials, you can make money. An opportunity to provide a service to a producer is there, and like I say, this is the space to be in. But this policy that government has created, EPR, is definitely needed. Not just in Canada we have it, but around the world to drive the circular economy. So one area definitely to focus on of the circular economy is the plastics chain. So the plastics from 1 to 7 are a lot of consumer products are made from. And this graphic shows you so many products, and a lot of these products are not even regulated. We do have packaging, but there's a lot of plastic products that are in consumer products that are not regulated. So there's an opportunity for companies to look at taking back those products and working that plastic back into the circular economy. And clothing, textiles is shown in here. And what's interesting with clothing, we're starting to see a lot of plastic is used in clothing as well to make it. So that becomes a little bit complex because of the different fabrics, and that's one of the potential areas. If any companies are involved with textile recycling, we're definitely, that is something that will be coming for EPR down the road. So BC's picture to further advance the circular economy of materials through EPR policy. This is a graphic that shows you where the path is for the next 5 or so years. 2022, we implemented a deposit for milk jugs to add into regular beverage containers for alcohol and non-alcohol containers. We just saw an increase to single-use plastics being collected by one of our EPR programs. Recycle BC is now taking a whole stream of single-use plastics that weren't regulated before, so that's been added. What we expect to see the government do in the 3rd quarter of this year is regulate, write the language around mattresses to be collected and recycled, propane canisters, fire extinguishers, medical sharps, and EV batteries. And then to the right is the implementation dates, where the producers of those products that are introducing them into the marketplace must implement programs either on their own as companies or scale it up and join an industry organization that will run the producer responsibility organization. So lots of opportunity here. If companies can dismantle mattresses and know how to deal with the foam in an environmentally friendly manner, then that's going to be a win. Right now, there are some challenge areas with that material, what to do with the foam in mattresses, as well as the textile covering. The rest of the stuff, the wood can be recycled in a mattress and the steel, but it's the foam that is really, and the fabric is the challenge area. So it's an opportunity to provide solutions to producers down the road for that. Propane canisters, that's just steel, basically taking out any remaining gas and recycling the steel. That's becoming a hazard in landfills as people throw them away. So that needs to be intercepted more for a safety reason. And fire extinguishers, they carry the forever chemicals, and there's an opportunity to safely extract the gases and destroy them. And so companies can look at that opportunity if anyone's interested in sort of that space. Medical sharps will be added We already have a pharmaceuticals program, but that program will likely take on dealing with how to deal with medical sharks and destroy them safely. And then the big one will be EV batteries. As we are moving into the clean transition around the world, we're starting to see more and more battery makers setting up shop in Canada and making investments. And Canada is a great place to recycle batteries because we already have the mining industry, particularly in Ontario, where we're seeing a lot of investments made. And many more car producers are going to be introducing new cars into the market. So there's going to be a lot of batteries to collect, but that'll be many years down the road. What we're going to see in the near future by 2026 is the first generation of electric vehicles reaching end of life, and that's where the opportunity is for that. And then packaging for IC&I is industrial, commercial, institutional. So we already have residential packaging regulated. The government is evaluating how to weave that in terms of the regulation. Right now, they're looking at that and see how to execute on that in the future. And there'll be improvements to the regulation made over the next 5 years as well, relating to adding other product categories around electronics and household hazardous waste. So the other aspect for companies and even producer responsibility organizations is to look at environmental social governance as their policies in their companies, to have a balanced approach, not just the environment, but socially. They're looking at their hiring practices and having good governance boards to tackle the complex problems and the purpose of their companies or in their organizations. And then if you're producing a report for your shareholders or investors or even the public, the place to really look at in this is to measure yourself against the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's just a good thing. This is now becoming a big area for reporting, not just to government, but the public. And it is, I think, a great opportunity for companies to highlight where they're making these connections on the SDGs. So here's a snapshot. I know this is busy, but opportunities in BC, C&D material recovery, construction and demolition waste for reuse and recycling. So we have 28 regional districts, regional governments, and anywhere they're dealing, some are recycling and separating out materials, but not everyone. So there's opportunities to recycle concrete, lumber, roofing materials, plastics, and pipes. And I mentioned EV batteries. We have in Trail, BC, we have Teck, our mining giant that has a smelter there. They've created a metal tech alley for battery recycling companies to locate and create a kind of a symbiotic hub there. Then we have land and air remediation. And I think one of the areas on land remediation, what we're seeing is traditional sectors in British Columbia are really hurting. The forest industry is now hurting. New forest policies have come in. So with where the economy is today and inflation and trade, we're seeing a lot of sawmills announcing layoffs. So sawmills are permanently shutting down. So there's opportunity to remediate those sites in BC. We already remediating pulp and paper operation. That's millions of dollars to recover that land and look at reuse potential of it. So huge opportunity, investments in the area. We also from waste to energy and also from coal mining next door in Alberta, they have coal-fired power plants. Ash in Western Canada is a big issue. So if you got an idea to deal with fly ash, then to make something out of it, then there's lots of it. Big, huge area and opportunity in Canada and in British Columbia around wastewater facility optimization, nutrient and energy recovery. And the pathways are there to, on the energy side, to make biomethane for vehicles, including hydrogen. Hydrogen is being looked at in BC and is supported with a hydrogen strategy. And SAF is sustainable aviation fuel. A lot of folks don't think about that, but huge opportunity with all the air travel that's going on around the world now. It's picked up since the pandemic. There's a lot of investments being made around the world, not so much in Canada, but a huge opportunity to take biogas and derive it to sustainable aviation fuel. The technology is there. I'm just showing the opportunities there for Italian companies and others to come in to solve this problem to produce sustainable aviation fuel for airlines and airports. Landfill gas capture, cleaning and reforming, again, same pathways, biomethane, hydrogen, and SAF. Water quality, improving water quality in remote areas and for municipalities, agriculture and mining. Coal mining in eastern British Columbia and the Rockies. We have had a selenium problem in the environment. Too much selenium is being released, so if there's opportunities for companies to look at that and talk to the coal mining industry. Soil enhancing its quality and opportunity for automated irrigation, as well as opportunity to produce biochar. We have a lot of agriculture and forestry residue, and biochar is a carbon fixer and good for soil. So opportunity is there if companies are in that space. Municipal organics and biosolids, again, either you make nutrients or do energy recovery from it. Municipal woody biomass, the same thing. Big area now emerging in British Columbia, we have carbon capture and we have credits. So we have a company, Carbon Engineering in Squamish, that's pulling emitted carbon out of the atmosphere. And right now they are looking at making hydrocarbon fuels from that. So that's very advanced engineering to look at those kind of things. Our natural gas utility, Fortis, is looking to decarbonize its natural gas pipeline. We have a lot of natural gas here, so we need to decarbonize it. So I talked about hydrogen from biogenic sources to help with that. Huge potential, and they're looking for partnerships. Geothermal, British Columbia doesn't talk too much about geothermal because geothermal is located in faraway places, the hot zones, but where there's an opportunity is really through geo-exchange to do district heating, and where there is hot zones, electricity and hydrogen production, obviously. Solar and wind, there's some of that in the province, not a lot. The reason why we don't have a lot of solar and wind is because British Columbia, most of its electricity is from hydroelectric, and 95% of it is from that source. So huge opportunity. But at the same time, I do want to say we are building an LNG plant in Kitimat, billions of dollars in investment there. They're looking at making LNG from natural gas, and that's going to increase BC's emissions, which is an opportunity area to look at solutions in that space. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, forestry and agriculture, potential for nutrient recovery, gasification of that biomass, again, biochar and hydrogen. And Eric talked about public-private partnerships, huge potential. Municipal governments are looking for this. And one of the area and potential to look at aggregation, a collection of companies that can work synergistically together is industrial symbiosis. Huge opportunity to formulate that kind of opportunity in Canada. And we sometimes forget about Canada's potential for green procurement. So the government of Canada is looking to buy green products and technologies from you. And if you have something, you can approach them. They make RFPs, put out RFPs to look at buying things. So the selling to government through green procurement is a huge opportunity. So that's my presentation, and I'll leave it at that and turn it back to Gustavo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you ready? Yes. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for all the consideration. I think that this is bigger than you believe and you think, everybody. So all the possibilities and opportunities only in one province. You might imagine what can it be in all Canada. Just to get shorter, because we have another presenter, I would like to present Rachel Morier. Rachel Morier is the manager of one of the biggest stores in beer Canada is a beer drinker, so he has a big market. She has a big market. It is a big market in Canada, and she went to a Comondo in looking for solutions of dealing with all the logistics and the situation of aluminum cans. So I give the word to Rachel. Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting for us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Gustavo, for the kind introduction. And thank you all, I guess, for hanging on. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'll try to be really quick. So I'm just going to share my screen really quick. So, just drop that. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So let me just make sure it's, hold on a second. There we go, full screen mode. There we go. So just a quick, I guess a little bit more details on a high level of the beer store. We have over 7,000 employees. We have over 440 retail, distribution, and warehousing locations across Canada, distributing over 1,000 brands. And so just from our key owners in our marketplace represent over 90% of the market share in Canada. So we are operating as a cooperative, and that means that we have over 30 brewer owners that help kind of contribute to the direction of our business. And we started almost a century ago, so 95 years since of October of last year. And we've clearly modernized since that time of horse and buggy. And part of this modernization is understanding new innovative technologies that will take us from merely just a retailer to expanding how we accept empty container returns through our stores, which is what makes us unique. So not only do we sell beer, we accept the containers back through our deposit return program. And that deposit return program has been around as long as the horse and buggy that you saw on the previous slide. So for over 95 years, where the brewers decided that, you know, having a deposit on the kegs ensured that they could get the kegs back, and from a logistical perspective, it made a lot of business sense. So much for a long time before talks of climate change and the circular economy. However, the concept of the circular economy is very much embedded in our organization, where we have what we call the industry standard bottle. It is the one bottle that is shared among the brewers. And so not only do we accept, you know, various materials through our program, we also have this separate sort for these bottles to make sure that they maintain, they are intact and they can be returned back to the brewer. So here's a quick snapshot of the various types of materials that we accept back and through which jurisdictions. So Bob had shared a bit about British Columbia, and we span across the provinces and the Northern Territories, and it varies by region, but it goes so far as even collecting the secondary packaging in British Columbia and Ontario. So one of the biggest populated provinces, as well as still accepting kegs and various types of bottles and aluminum cans. So by the standard bottle, we do mean that shared bottle for domestic production, and the private mold bottle are for like the special unique bottles for the brewers that they want their particular brands back. And so when we look at our performance and the amount of containers that we manage, in Ontario alone, we manage 1.5 billion containers, which equates to over 200,000 tons of GHG emissions avoided. We have an amazing return rate for refillable bottles that represent about 20% of the market volume in the province. And we also have 50,000 tons of increased diversion away from curbside collection. So in 2007, the provincial government decided to move the wine and spirit containers into the deposit program as well. And since then, we've seen an increase of environmental benefits as such, not only from the savings of having not to deal with glass through the blue box, but of course, having better end markets as a result of having cleaner streams through sorting glass through our stores. Collectively, I would say this is just Ontario, where we have the environmental report that's available through our website, but collectively across the entire country, we'd be collecting probably closer to 3 billion containers. And so Bob touched upon some of the regulation changes, and it kind of goes hand in hand with how we look at the opportunities here in Canada. So, for example, in British Columbia last year, they introduced milk into the system, and then our predominantly French-speaking province of Quebec is looking to update their deposit return program by 2025. So they're going through some changes as well. So why I bring this up is this opportunity for modernization of deposit return systems in Canada, not only just for beer, but I think for many different jurisdictions. Because in BC, for example, not only do they have deposit for beer, but for like non-alcohol containers as well. So when we think of the system as a whole, and especially during the pandemic, we had a challenge of trying to have more convenient and broad options for customers to have access to return their containers. And so the core function under my umbrella is to manage the collection networks to ensure that we have an efficient system that continues to be coordinated with our full goods delivery, in which we use the reverse logistics. And so on your screen is just a snapshot. We have a new corporate office that we moved in August of 2021, and some of our trucks. So we have like the big 18-wheel trailers. This would be more of an urban city truck picking up. So one space that have the different slots. So the different areas would be like the full goods on one side of the truck and the empties on another side of the truck, so that we can do that kind of drop off and pick up at the same time. And of course, part of our business is complying to the environmental regulations set by the government, and to work with the government agencies across the board to make sure that we are following the rules accordingly. But in terms of what that means for our technology and what we look for, is we want to make sure we continue to have high in recycling and ensure that no materials are sent directly to incineration, road aggregate, or a landfill. So that means, for our bottles, even from the pallet wraps, that we ensure that they have a home, even though it's technically the IC&I sector or the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector. So it's not as, at the moment, highly regulated as you would for kind of consumer goods going to the homes or kind of residential recycling. So when, for example, we were in Ecomundo, when we're looking at various solutions, it could be from, from how we charge our forklifts in our warehouse to, improved densifying equipment. So for example, we have like the big densifiers for aluminum. In BC, we have the smaller biscuits that then get palletized before getting shipped out. So there are various solutions that exist across the board based on our different needs of our various warehouses. And then, of course, even just the efficiencies of our building. We improve refrigeration systems because everyone likes their beer cold, of course. And even improving kind of ventilation. So in the winter months, we don't have to pump as much energy, that we can still utilize some of the cold air outside into some of our stores. So it really ranges, not just in managing containers itself and waste management. Even look at packaging, because the regulation is not just for the containers itself, but secondary packaging. And we're seeing the regulation move to more what they call 100% EPR, or basically the producers paying the full cost of managing materials. And so that includes the secondary packaging. And the picture on your left is just an example of, it's not necessarily the best operation. We want to find a more efficient way of managing that secondary packaging. So this would be not directly at our store, but a service provider that's collecting packaging on our behalf. And so we want to make sure that we continue to demonstrate continuous improvement to the regulators so that you see that we're investing back into the system. And we collaborate with, the various service providers on some of our shared challenges. So for example, at Ecomundo, we saw someone a provider that had a solution of having outdoor bins that had a locking mechanism that made it easy to drop off containers to prevent theft, which can happen. So some retailers have challenges with space in store, so it would provide an opportunity outside of store. We even saw more advanced, self-contained return locations. So it's not just a reverse vending machine, but almost like a little operating hub that people can go in and sort their containers in various categories and have it customized, which is of course very appealing to us because we have not just typical like plastic and glass and cans, but we have not only our glass of going one way, so direct to recycling because it's not refillable. Then we have refillable glass that requires soft drop, so we don't want to have those bottles damaged because they're intended to be reused. And then of course the cans as well, which we would eventually want some kind of crushing mechanism so we can save space. So as we evolve as environmental leaders, we want to focus on the high performance. How do we continue to make our system as efficient as possible, and while still having that consumer accessibility component? And what we saw that was really interesting is some of these manufacturers of these reverse vending machines or any consumer-facing equipment would also include some kind of incentive program or ways to communicate of the benefits of their actions by returning their containers, which I think is really neat and something that helps differentiate from other providers in the market. And of course, it also ties into the charitable giving and the social aspect of our business. So having these technologies allows us to continue to do good work, to allow the donation of empties, so folks will leave their containers instead of getting the depositor back. We can make sure that they're counted accordingly, and that technology of kind of telling the consumer, oh, do you want to donate this? And then there's more of a technology component that allows them to donate it to the charity of their choice, for example. So there's a lot of great opportunities out there that we're exploring. We're really pleased to see some of the providers at Ecomundo, and continue to look forward to follow up and see what's happening in the space. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. This amazing because in a short period of time, 1 hour, we try to show either the region, either a transversal opportunity for all the companies, and in appeal, the amount of opportunity in only one company like yours is amazing. So I think that everybody was listening to the numbers of only for beer store, and I believe that always everybody wants to have a solution for what you are proposing. Now, I don't know, Marco, if
It's a question.
Okay.
We have solicited questions also. People can write in Italian, potete scrivere le vostre domande in italiano nella chat e poi noi le traduciamo. And so did Stefania Miranda, who's asking Bob if there is, okay, let me see, if among the various opportunities that you were presenting, there could be any chance to scope, demand for production of SRF, so for local cement makers. And the acronym I'm not familiar, but if you are not, we can look it up. Basically, this would be services, environmental services for cement factories.
Yeah, so our cement operations where production happens is in the Metro Vancouver area. We have Lafarge and Lehigh, and they're both regulated not by the province. The Metro Vancouver has control of the regulatory environment for air. So what they're trying to do is obviously not only reduce their carbon emissions, but one of the cement operations uses shredded tires instead of natural gas to offset. So that's deemed okay, but we have to remember burning tires is still releasing carbon. So the opportunity is there. I think what we need to think about is what I mentioned about carbon engineering. It would be great if you can do that, but you need a carbon engineering like company beside them to pull the carbon back out and lock it up or turn it back into some other product to keep things neutral. So it's all about dealing with the fossil carbon. So yes, we can deal with materials with cement kilns, as substitutes. They're not too keen on throwing garbage into cement kilns because it adds complexities, but certain high BTU value materials. It could be carpet, shredded carpet. This is an example, plastic based, but at the same time, it raises the emissions, but it deals with the waste. So if you can create synergistic partnerships in industries with like cement and others by pulling the carbon back out and then working it again through advanced technology to make something else, that's where I think it's a huge opportunity for companies. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm on the right track.
I believe so. But Stefania can come back through the chat or in your voice. And please feel free to come in, everyone, and ask questions directly. I mean, yeah. We have another one here from Marco Bavastrelli. And first of all, he wants to thank everyone for the opportunity to chat. And he asks to incentivize the collection of, the separation of waste by citizens, by residents. Are there in place any systems of pay as you throw in Canada? So, charging citizens by the amount and the kind of waste that they recycle, and if so, what are the technologies or the tools that are used to identify the waste that citizens put in the bins and in the collection points?
I take it that's for me, Marco, again?
I don't know, you or Eric, I believe. I mean, Rachel gave an example of that, of course. I mean, and that's been around for more than 90 years. But are there any other ones that we can dispose?
Yes, Eric or Bob?
Bob, you can start. Yeah.
Sure, and you can build on it, Eric, as you see. So if I'm understanding the question, there's lots of materials like to be intercepted through various municipal points, and even in partnership, we have a depot system, quite extensive depot system for that supports extended producer responsibility programs, and those are for regulated products, and those depots sign contracts with the producer organizations to get compensation. Some of those depots have a contract with the beer program in BC. And so they contract with other programs to collect materials. When things aren't regulated at the provincial level, there's opportunity to collect something that has value. You can approach those regional districts. There's 28 of them in British Columbia. If you have an idea that you want to collect a certain product that's not regulated provincially, but it's in the interest of local governments to not put it in the landfill, and you can create an economic opportunity with it, yes. They will help you facilitate that, either what you want to do it at the landfill or you want to do it as a separate program. So yeah, there is mechanisms to do that. The only thing is, when you do that, the people that want to do the right thing will pay at the back end to bring it to you and pay that price. Whereas EPR, it is tagged, the price mechanism is tagged upfront on the product when you buy it when it's new versus at the end of life you're trying to bring it back and do the right thing. Hopefully that, I think that's what the person was asking about. Yes, there is opportunity, but those are through partnerships with local governments.
Eric, do you want to integrate the answer with the Ontario perspective?
Thanks, Gustavo. And I think Bob's capturing what Ontario is aspiring to do, that British Columbia has already established. The Resource Productivity Recovery Authority is the new provincial requirement to integrate a lot of the municipal standards for what can be recovered from these waste streams. Historically, that was Stewardship Ontario here in Ontario, and it's been a challenge for municipalities to kind of have the same types of services. Even just from neighboring municipalities within a region, you have different types of things that can be recovered, recycled, and returned. The beer store model, the LCBO model, has definitely been the kind of the flagship of that type of pay as you throw type of perspective. There are national, multinational companies that are providing cradle to grave services for their technologies. HP is the one that I kind of point to in industry, where they take back printer cartridges, printers back from however age they are. But there's a lot of companies that are trying to do this with their products because of that reputational risk. So that's the important side of it, is that there are progressive companies that are really trying to address this problem. But at a larger scale, the municipalities have kind of the say as to what it is right now until it actually is fully regulated at the provincial level. So it's not a straight answer, and it's not something that can be solved at the local level per se. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
Well, but probably also the person asking the question wanted to also highlight some more advanced systems. Like I know in Japan they have bins that measure their what you throw inside and stuff like that. But I don't think we're there yet. But anyway, there is another question. From Stefania, who's asking through the chat, because she has other people in the office, and so she's being kind to them, not to engross them with her chat. But I mean, she asks, coming back to SRF, there are some big cement companies, Lafarge, Heidelberg, and others, that give comfort letters to SFR producers stating that their product is a good quality product to be burned in their cement kilns. So is Canada appreciating the use of SRF in the cement kilns? And if not, as it sounds from Bob's reply, I mean, if there are so many doubts, what are those doubts? I hope I interpreted Stefania's question correctly.
I think the doubts has to do with the regulatory end of things about emissions, and the doubts are also from the company is what is the makeup of the SRF is residual material coming from other processes, the cement industry does not want to mess around with their recipe in making clinker. So there is opportunity. For example, Lafarge has a side company, Geo Exchange, and they look at input materials into making. So they look at the aggregate side, but they also look at the energy side of input materials. If it's a fit, they will look at it, but I think you have to look at the chemistry makeup of the SRF that's coming in to essentially satisfy them, and also the regulators to know that the permit can be amended to take that material in. So those are the quality control and emissions and pollution related criteria to satisfy. So hopefully I'm answering that. I don't know what more to say on that. It is doable, but it depends on, again, the input.
I would just jump in, I think at a higher level, just based on some of my experience on just the definition of what counts as recovery or not. I think some of the regulators are just challenged with, I think a lot of environmental groups will push, like, if things are melted to the lower grade product, then what's the incentivized to design for something that can be recycled to a higher use? And so even in our own mandate, when we say nothing goes to incineration, road aggregate, or landfill, so if we think about just kind of the end markets of cement kilns. The reason why the government asked that, and that was kind of part of our contract with the government to manage the beverage alcohol containers, it was really driven by the fact that they want to ensure that they're trying to move up the waste hierarchy. And it's clearly, a bit controversial because there are still materials that are very, very challenging, and cement kilns absolutely makes a lot of sense. So it's definitely the dialogue that's happening right now with the regulators and educating them on why these solutions make sense in a certain context. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you very much, Gustavo. If you don't mind, I will continue translating the chat. Okay, Sergio De Gennaro says hello to everyone and asks, are there centers for sterilizing?
Marco, sorry to interrupt. Sergio is a friend. Sergio is the one who already accepted to come to Americana. This is he will be with us. Yes, he will be with us a couple of years ago too. And the answer is yes, in terms of the sterilizing.
Okay, but I haven't finished the question.
No, that one. Yeah, he's asking, is there any sterilizing centers of hospital waste in Canada to do after that a valorization for energy?
Waste to energy, yes.
Yes, waste to energy. So the only thing I want to say, the only thing we've been in company with Ecomondo a couple of years ago, who did this is Stericycle, is one of the biggest company in North America. So following I can give you the question to, I don't know, Bob or Eric, who wants to answer sterilizing market, hospital market.
I can jump in, and Eric, you can add to it. I'm seeing a lot of hospital waste with the masks. Just a personal. My mother-in-law went into hospital. She had a fall. Every time we go to visit, we gotta get our masks on, and those masks are just thrown away. So huge amount of waste being generated. But even within the hospital system, yes, a lot of this stuff is taken away by waste management companies. So likely in British Columbia, I don't think it is. It might be just going to landfill, but there's huge opportunity if you have technology solutions for the health authorities to solve some of the contaminated hazardous waste problem, but on site. But keep in mind, you have to provide a full service for them. They're not interested in just buying the technology from you, and then they have to figure out the rest. You have to provide a complete service where they don't have to touch it. Also, they're throwing their hazardous hospital waste in it, and you do the rest. So yes, there is opportunity, because right now it is being trucked away either for landfilling or incineration somewhere. So Eric, do you have any further? I don't know what Ontario is doing, but that's my personal snapshot of what I see in BC right now.
Sure. Well, thank you. So I came from formerly working in the pharmaceutical manufacturing sector, and so obviously the aggregate of hospital waste would be the hazardous side. It would be disposed of very similar to the pharmaceutical manufacturing sector in terms of incineration because of that hazardous side. If it's sharps, that's where Stericycle would be focused on and collecting something specific like sharps. But to Bob's point, there are innovations from a domestic side that kind of encompass that PPE realm because of the pandemic. A good example, I work at a university here in Ontario as their sustainability manager, and we have sourced a local Brantford manufacturer that provides PPE recycling. They actually do a full service suite. They collect all the PPE in collection boxes, and then they sterilize them and shred them again to be reused to make gowns. The sterilization is actually utilizing ultraviolet and different types of temperature controlled measures because people are afraid that, these are masks that people have used. We audited the facility as part of procuring them, and they're meeting all of the regulatory standards medically for it to be reused. And so a lot of the Southwestern Ontario commercial and institutional partners are using this service. It's a small to medium enterprise that started up during the pandemic as a response to the challenges, and they've been very successful. So that meeting the actual need based on the demand, prioritized demand in this case, was actually something that the provincial government also gave them startup resources to really build their capital capacity and service capacity. So it's addressing a problem.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a last question, I would say, and thanks all for asking those. I mean, including Sergio, the last one. But the latest one is from Matteo Dossetto, who did some research on circular economy in Detroit, and now is asking whether there would be any initiatives under preparation to do sort of an energy, local energy production that incinerator that produces energy. I mean, on a local scale. So, because he and his partners could be interested in participating in tenders of this kind, and considering also that they did some other work also elsewhere, not only research work in Detroit, but also in other places. And they do industrial design and could provide some kind of services like engineering and design. And we do have also online Paolo Benzi, who wants to, might want to jump in. But first, I will give it to our panelists to tell us if the development of this kind of solutions is popular or not.
I can start, Bob, if you're cool with that. I think from the example that I shared, that Marco had shared in the presentation that I highlighted as part of the case studies, BioN, which is in Elmira, kind of serves as that same circular economy type of case study that you're referring to, Matteo. It is taking organic wastes from municipal collection. It's taking organic waste from localized farming. And so that was sponsored by the provincial government from the agriculture food side to serve as an energy generating site for the municipality, but also the local farmers and agriculture providers in the area. But all of the waste from the cattle, the pigs, the chickens, they were all collected alongside municipal organic waste from just down the highway to serve as that circular waste to energy recovery plant. And that's utilizing technology that's coming from Europe, but an established capacity that was funded by the province. And so it was a very interesting public-private partnership result. And one of the few examples in Ontario that actually benefits other municipalities next door. And so that added capacity of the companies that need to bring their waste to them, that is their feedstock. And so I think a fresh food development concept would work really well if positioned that way.
Thank you, Eric. I believe that I don't know if you say Paolo Benzi wants to say something, or we just stop here, Marco.
Let's just conclude, and just repeating that our procurement desk is available to
yes, Paolo.
I'm here. Good morning to everybody. You listening?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. So I just wanted to spend 1 minute, few words. Congratulations for the big webinar and the research. Very, very interesting. And the procurement desk at the Italian Trade Commission in Canada is facing to the public tenders, and in this domain, especially what we find is about the wastewater systems, and about not really about the waste in general. So the federal, the provincial, and the municipal, they have some tenders about new installation or maybe repair or to recover all the installation. So we can keep you updated about what is happening in Canada, especially the Italian firms that want to work in this environment. And please follow the garapalti.ca and or write some email if you have specific demands for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paolo. And I believe we are run of time. We are finished half an hour more than we expected, because it's so interesting and so challenging, and so many data and opportunities, either geographically and opportunities in a 360 degrees market opportunities, that we are available for any other further opinion or question. Is just sending us an email to toronto@ice, like ice.it, just to if we can solve the question, or we can resend to the presenters at this webinar. For me, it's only to thank you, everybody, because we have been watching this webinar and participating for 1 hour and a half. And I believe that this is plenty of ideas that in the future, next future, we will be trying to look for their interest and insertion into the possibility of the Canadian market. We are with Dr. Saladini and the offices in Vancouver. We are also opening, we didn't say that, we are opening also another office in Vancouver. So we're trying to cover the whole market with people of the office, and this will be the next challenge. And obviously, anytime, whatever you want to ask, we are at your disposal. Thank you very much for the time, and have an amazing Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank
Ciao,
you.
arrivederci. See you in Canada.
Wow.